welcome to Vivian, our compliance specialist at Company Partners. We're so happy to have you here today as we'll be discussing COID, as it is April COID month. So thank you so much for joining us, Viv.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. I'm so excited to share the knowledge that I have with regards to COID. And we know very well that this is a COID month and people have to do their returns and get up to date.
Awesome. So let's get stuck into it, Viv. Just to make sure we all understand what COID means, please explain to us, what does COID actually stand for?
Okay, Kelly. COID stands for Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases, which is done at the Department of Labor. Some call it COIDA, just adding an act on COID to call it COIDA. And some people call it WCA, that is the Workmen's Compensation Association.
Perfect, Viv. Thanks for explaining that. So just to get on to the next question, Viv, is COIDA registration compulsory?
Yes, Kelly, COID is very much compulsory according to the COID Act. Each and every employer who is employing people, be it part-time or full-time, it is compulsory for them to register the employees under the COID Act.
Okay, brilliant. So just regards to the COIDA registration, Viv, I think it's best that we get practical because there are some companies who have not yet registered for COID. And I think we should just take them through the actual COID registration form so they understand what they can expect and just get a clear explanation of how to complete the form as well. So I'm going to share my screen with you and we can just go through the COID form together.
No problems, Kelly. While you're busy sharing the screen, I'll just be talking about registration of COID. Once the COID registration has been finalized, a client gets a compensation fund number, that is a CF number, a reference number that is allocated to the company. Whenever they are doing future submissions, they are going to be using that number. We are going to be chatting about that at a later stage.
Perfect. Thank you, Viv. Can you see my screen?
Yes, of course, Kelly, I can.
Great. So as we have it here, this is the COIDA registration form that will be submitted to the Department of Labor. So there are 6 parts to this form. So can you please take us through part number 1, which is the particulars of the employer?
Okay, no, that's perfect. So before I go to part number 1, remember any entity can register for COID. That is where you must tick with an X the type of entity that you're registering for COID for. That is very important just for your own information. So particulars for an employer, that's part number 1. That is very important. Who is the employer? That is the company name, the registration number, the address, the postal codes, and all that stuff. That is basically company information that is required there.
Great, thank you, Viv. And then I see part 2, it says here, particulars of owner or closed corporation or company or trust.
So that is basically particulars of the director or the member of a CC or the trustees in a trust, whichever way, according to the entity. So we need to know the directors of the company. They need to provide that details on the application form for that to be captured at the department.
Okay, great. And then part 3, it says the particulars of the nature of business. I think this is a section that a lot of businesses struggle with. So can you please explain this section to us, please?
Yes, this is very, very important, Kelly. So the Department of Labor has got a list of the industries that one will have to choose from. But what is more important with the nature of business, you need to explain a little bit further of what exactly you are doing so that the Department of Labor knows. For example, if you can just put construction company, what type of construction are you doing? You need to be specific, like, for example, engineering, civil engineering construction, or maybe mechanical engineering construction, or maybe demolition, so that they know what exactly you are doing in that construction company. So that's what the nature of business entails.
Okay, perfect. And am I correct in saying there will be things that are not applicable? In that case, you can just mark it as non-applicable on the form.
That's correct, Kelly.
Okay, great. And then part 4, Viv, it says particulars of responsible person, director, member, or partner of the business.
So basically, who is the main contact person in the company? So the details of the main contact person are the ones to be captured on part 4. Let's say the Department of Labor wants to get in contact with your company. Who is the person that they are going to be contacting? That is very important. Their name, their surname, ID number, and all the relevant detailed information required by them.
Okay, Great. And then number 5, it does say NB, so I'm assuming this is an important section, particulars of the employees that must be completed.
So basically, this is where the employer puts the details of the employee. How many employees do they have? And how much are they giving the employees? So that is actually the total earnings of all the employees that they have from the 1st of March to the 28th of February. That's the 1st of March to the 28th, 29th of February, depending with the year. So that is actually the total amount. So when we are going to be talking about the estimated salaries for each and every employee, that is going to be covered in the return of earnings that we are going to cover at a later stage.
Okay, great. That makes sense, Viv. So, part 6, the final section, this is additional information. Could you just explain what is required here as well?
So, on the additional information required by the head office, this is very important for a company to have a legit business bank account. Remember, the COID used do your submissions as an employer so that if anything happens to your employees, you get compensated on that. So, how are they going to compensate you if you do not have legit company banking details? As they will not be able to compensate you in your personal bank account. So, that is basically for validation purposes, and that is another requirement in order for them to approve your application.
Okay, great. Thank you, Viv. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. But I think, yeah, that is quite important to go through that form because a lot of our businesses will be completing it as it will be their first time registering for COID. So thank you for that. And then just regarding the actual registration, now that I have a COID number or my COID registration, what are some of the benefits I can expect from doing this registration?
So, Kelly, everybody wants to know the benefits of having a certain registration. So, number one, the most and very important thing is that it is for employees and employers' financial security. So, basically, what that means is that by the employer contributing on a yearly basis to the department, if an employee gets injured at work, they are not going to be held liable of the expenses that are going to be incurred, the hospital bills or monthly salaries of someone who is in disability condition or etc. So it is going to secure the employee from taking funds out of their own pocket, as the Department of Labor is going to be taking care of that. And also the employee is going to be taken care of instead of them sitting at home without any source of income while they are still in the sickness condition. And secondly, tenders and contracts. Each and every tender, they will require the employer to be registered for COID as well as get a letter of good standing to show that they are in good standing with the Department of Labor.
Okay, great, Viv. So it sounds like this is a basic compliance requirement for any business that has an employee. But not only will the business and the employers benefit from this registration, but also when presented with opportunities such as tenders or contracts with other businesses, often this is a minimum requirement just to even apply. Is that correct?
That's correct, Kelly, yes.
Great stuff, Viv. So my next question is regarding the COIDA assessment. So we understand that businesses can register for COID at any time of the year, but specifically April is when the COID assessment or return of earnings are due. Can you please explain to us what is this COID assessment all about?
Okay, so COID registration is done, Kelly. Now, every April, the declarations must be submitted at the Department of Labor to show how many employees do you have as an employer and how much you are paying them in the current year. And also, you are going to submit how much are you going to be paying them in the coming year and how many employees are you going to be having as well in the coming year. So that is the actual earnings as well as the provisional earnings, of which we are going to be touching that when I take you through the return of earnings form. So, but the return of earnings is basically the declarations that an employer makes at the Department of Labor to show how many employees they have, how much they pay them, to determine how much they are going to be assessed by the Department of Labor to pay.
Great, Viv. So, as you mentioned, we're going to quickly run through once again the actual return of earnings form so people understand what the form requires of them when submitting. So, I'll quickly share my screen again. You can just let me know when you see it.
No problems.
All right.
I can see the screen, Kelly.
Perfect. So here we have our latest return of earnings form, which is the form required now to submit for April month. So this one has three sections, section A, B, and C. So the
Mhm.
first section is for the employer's details. So what do we have to fill in here?
So basically, it's all about the employer. Who is the employer? Company name, registration number, URF registrations, tax numbers, business address. So that is basically the business information. Who is the owner and where are they located? All that basic information.
Okay, perfect. And then section B, which I think is probably the most important section, this is the declaration of earnings. So can you please explain this section to us?
Okay, perfect. So you can see, as I did mention earlier, if you can see at the top left, there's actual earnings, and then at the top right, there is provisional earnings. So the actual earnings is basically what has happened or is happening from the 1st of March 2023 to the 28th of February 2024. That is the actual. How many employees do you have? How much you are paying them from March to February, March last year to February this year.
Mm-hmm.
Then when it comes to the provisional, you estimate, okay, based on the previous year, how much am I going to be paying my employees in the coming year? And am I going to be having more employees? So if you feel like you're going to be having more employees, you can add the number. So we need the number and the salaries, the number of employees and the salaries. Then the total is going to be assessed by the Department of Labor. That is what the employer is going to pay.
Perfect. Thank you for that explanation, Viv. And then the last section, section C, is the declaration.
Okay, so on the declaration, this is basically to say you as an employer, all the detailed information that you have put on the form above is correct. So you need to make sure that you sign for what you have put. And if they can find out that the information that you have provided on the form is not correct, you are going to be held liable for that. So it is important for you to put the correct information, as you are going to be held liable for your mistakes.
Okay. So with regards to us giving them so much personal details regarding our employees and also how much they earn, they don't ask you to verify this by means of payslip, but they do ask you to declare that any information you are completing is truthful and accurate. So they have this surety. So should they come and do an audit of your company or anything like that, and they see that in fact the information you give them is false, even though you have declared that it's true, that's where some issues may arise and you may get penalties for that.
That's correct. That's why we say they are going to be held liable of
Yes.
the information that they put on the forms. And most importantly, as well, Kelly, just for them to know,
Mm-hmm.
if they are going to get a representative to do their declarations or their submissions on behalf of the company, they will need to provide the Department of Labor with the power of attorney. That is basically a form that is signed declaring that they are giving permission to this person to submit on their behalf.
Okay, perfect, Viv. Thanks for explaining that. So I'll just end my screen there. And yeah, I think once again, it's really helpful to just go through the actual return of earnings form so people understand what the form is required of them and they know how to complete it accurately. So, with that being said, with these assessment fees that are due now every April, over time or from year to year, is it possible that the COIDA registration assessment fees change?
Yes, Kelly, assessment fees may change. Sometimes they may not change, but they can be changed based on if an employer employs more people in the coming year. Obviously, the more employees they are, the more the assessment. And also, if an employer by any chance change the nature of business, let's say, for example, from maybe secretarial to construction, this is basically a risk assessment. So construction is more riskier, which means the assessment might go higher. So depending with the number of employees, the estimated salaries, the nature of business, if all those can change, that changes the assessment fees, Kelly.
Okay, great, Viv. Thank you. That makes sense. So, just going back to the COIDA registration as well, is it a requirement to do that COIDA registration before you get your letter of good standing, and why so?
Yes, it is important. I'll explain to you, Kelly. So, a letter of good standing is basically a letter that one is given by the Department of Labor to show that they are in good standing with the Labor Department or they do not have any arrears with the Department of Labor. So the Department of Labor can only issue that letter if a company is registered for COID and they have that compensation fund reference number we spoke about earlier, and also their return of earnings declarations, which we spoke about, also are up to date. So if those two are done, then the Department of Labor can issue an employer the letter of good standing to show that they are up to date and they are in good standing with them, which is a premium requirement for tenders and contracts as well.
Great, thank you, Viv. So, just lastly, if I'm a new business, I'm a startup, I don't actually have any employees in my business yet, do I still need to then register for COIDA?
Yes, it is important, Kelly, to register for COIDA. The employer can make themselves a working director, because most of the times the reason why people are looking for COIDA and the letter of good standing is for tender and contracts purposes, just to be compliant. So if they don't have any people, let's say they are still looking for a tender, they want them to be compliant, they can register themselves as a working director. And as they employ people, they can add their employees to the list. So yes, it is important to get registered for COIDA.
Perfect. Thank you, Viv. Well, I think that ends off our questions for today. And I just feel, yeah, this has been super helpful. And I'm sure a lot of businesses will appreciate this information, especially as going through the forms that they will be sitting with this month, or if it's their first time registering for COIDA, helping with them with that form as well. But also just understanding the importance of this registration, that it is a requirement for all businesses, especially those who have employees. And even if you don't have an employee, but you need the COIDA registration or letter of good standing for business opportunities with other businesses or contracts or tenders, then you'll also be needing this as a requirement. So thank you so much for the information, Viv.
Thank you for having me, Kelly, and I'm very excited that I've shared this knowledge on how to complete these forms for clients, as most of the clients struggle, and also to give them some know-how on the submissions of the returns, because the returns needs to be filed within 30 days. Failure to do that within 30 days can actually lead to 10% penalty. So it is important for you as a business owner to be able to file the returns on time to avoid these penalties and also stay compliant for more business opportunities.
Wow, thanks for clarifying that, Viv. But yeah, thank you. It's been awesome having you, and I'm sure we'll have lots of more questions after this video.
We will be more than welcome to help them with all the questions that they have.
Great, Viv. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you, Kelly. Bye.